Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon for colleagues joining today. It's a pleasure to be your moderator today in this panel about using artificial intelligence in subnational parliaments, exploring the benefits and the risks. It's my pleasure to welcome esteemed colleagues from different parliaments in different regions across the globe. We have the pleasure of welcoming Bernice Watson from the Queensland Parliament in Australia. We also have the pleasure of welcoming Jonas Gomes from the Municipal Chamber of São Paulo in Brazil. From the private sector, we have our good friend Jonathan Ruckert from NovaWorks in Australia. And we also have the pleasure of welcoming Natasha Visser from the Western Cape Provincial Parliament in South Africa. Colleagues, I have prepared a few questions to bring to each one of you. Our panel is estimated to be 60 minutes long. I will try to keep it on this time frame. But before we start with the questions, I'd like to hear an introduction about you. What's your role in the parliament or in your institution, and what's your interest in this particular topic? If you agree, I'll do these alphabetically. Bernice, would you like to introduce yourself to the colleagues?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. So before I joined the parliamentary service in 2011, I worked in a range of public sector agencies, and I've developed a strong interest in I guess, policy development involving a lot of consultation and using consultation to inform analysis as well. So engagement's a strong interest of mine. I now lead the committee office at Queensland Parliament. So that's a team of around 35 staff who work in supporting our parliamentary committees. In Queensland, which is a unicameral parliament, the committee stage is a really central part of the bill to act process. After a bill is introduced and then read a first time, every single bill is referred to a parliamentary committee for a detailed examination, and that's actually provided in the Queensland Constitution. And they typically have 6 weeks to inquire into the bill, and they have to look at policy intent, compliance with fundamental legislative principles, and compliance with the Human Rights Act. And they do this usually by seeking written submissions, which they publish, holding public and private hearings sometimes. They're usually broadcast live. They do research, assess the compatibility with those acts that I mentioned, and then report back to the Parliament. So I help support the delivery of the support to all of that.
Thank you so much.
And I guess, yeah, interest in engagement, and therefore that's one of my interests in how we can do it smarter.
Thank you so much, Bernice, for your introduction. Jonas, would you like to introduce yourself to the colleagues as well?
Thank you for having me here, Luís. Thank you for your invitation. It's very satisfying to see familiar faces again. I'm Jonas Gomes. I'm Chief of Protocol at São Paulo City Council. I'm also a head of innovation in our Parliamentary Studies Department. And in my role, I propose and supervise the integration of innovative technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, into our legislative process to enhance efficiency, effectiveness, and of course, transparency. It's a pleasure to be here and to share some insights on how AI is transforming our operations and day-to-day work schedule, and to discuss the future of the potential of these technologies to public administration in general.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Jonathan, would you like to introduce yourself to us and to the colleagues as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name is Jonathan from NovaWorks. Been working with parliaments for the last, say, 20 plus years. And, you know, specifically in the last sort of 12 months, you know, to 24 months, really, my main focus has really been around artificial intelligence and the impacts to parliaments around that as well. So formulating strategy advice, and other sort of related things around artificial intelligence. So I'm really curious and keen to understand everyone's viewpoint from this panel, and I know that there's a lot of knowledge in the room, and yeah, keen to hear and hopefully contribute to something today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us today. I'd like to hear your introduction as well, Natasha. Please feel free to use.
Yeah, I'm Natasha Visser. I'm a researcher working at the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. We are a very small regional parliament, not that small, but we don't have a lot of staff and resources in general. So we are always very keen to try and adopt technology that can help us be more effective and efficient, and actually bridge some of our current staff constraints. So yeah, we are quite keen to explore and see what artificial intelligence can actually do for us to sort of stretch our current resources a bit further.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Just before we start making a recognition to the colleagues in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, last year they released a very interesting report on e-Parliament under the leadership of the Secretary, Mr. Romeo Adams. So just making this recognition that the Western Cape Parliament is doing a tremendous job around its digital transformation and its research about this topic specifically. Colleagues, allow me to bring my first question to each one of you for us to start. The idea of this panel was not by chance. First, usually digital transformation, the usage of AI is commonly associated with large national parliaments with a lot of resources. And we here have the possibility of sharing this expertise of 3 subnational parliaments that are spearheading this effort in your own countries with innovative solutions and presenting a way for other subnational legislatures to follow your path. So we invited each one of you from different departments. We have, for example, a more procedural perspective from Bernice, from the committees. We have Jonas with the protocol, and also Natasha with the research department, and Jonathan is the technologist in the table. So I'm trying to bring these different perspectives to show colleagues how different departments can use and benefit these technologies in our institution. So my first question to you, starting with Bernice, what are your insights on the possible usage of AI on the Queensland Parliament's committees? And what do you see as its possible usages in the legislative process more generally? Bernice, please feel free to use the floor.
Thank you. So I've only recently conceptualized artificial intelligence in terms of there being AI, so focused on rules and logic and how that can sort of, pull out ideas and based on rules and code that is put into it. And then the generative AI, which can actually create something new. And I think that's the part that seems to be the more controversial part in my understanding of it. And I think that probably is where it does get a little bit more risky. But for us, that's just a preface to where I'm at with my thinking. Time is our big problem. We have typically a 6-week period for a committee to run an inquiry from start to finish, and public engagement is a big part of the inquiry, as well as looking at compliance with other legislation. So given the focus on engagement with the public, I think I can see potential for AI to help with stakeholder identification. So I think there would be potential for a piece of legislation to have some sort of analysis applied to it that drew out who are the key groups that might be affected by this piece of legislation, and perhaps even help us work out how to make connections with those particular groups. But I'd emphasize it's only a tool and not replacing other things, because there are a lot of people who would miss out if we just focused on an assessment of legislation based on some sort of logical rules, because humans have a lot of interests that aren't based on logical rules. We use AI now, I guess, in terms of like Facebook geo-targeting or population targeting. And I can see the scope for that to kind of be linked in more to legislation with some form of AI. I think that it could be used to help hugely, actually, in our assessments of whether legislation is compliant with the Human Rights Act. So I guess checking the legislation against the Human Rights Act itself, but also against court decisions that have been, used where human rights have come into play, and not just by trawling a database, but contextualizing and perhaps even helping come up with suggestions about why this particular case might be relevant and might mean that perhaps in this piece of legislation, the breach of human rights is not justified or is justified. So I can see some just much faster ability to do that sort of thing than we have now. In fact, we don't really have a lot of time to do that effectively, and there is still we don't really have a precedent database. We're just at the early stages, so I think that could be helped immensely. I won't talk about processing submissions because there already is AI that helps. We don't use it actually, but I know that there are many products around that help with the analysis of identifying themes, assessing demographic data of people who might make submissions to committee inquiries that might help members of Parliament think about who is this important to and what does that group of people think, because that's always of interest to politicians making decisions. But where I can see some really more innovative potential is potentially using AI to support consultation processes. So actually having them help facilitate online forum type arrangements. They could also reach out into where a lot of the public debate is happening now, which is not a trusted, regulated environment. It's usually the wild internet, and potentially offer fact checks or help drive people to reliable sources of information in those public forums that aren't Parliament, and help drive them to some of the parliamentary decision-making processes where they can make a difference. Again, it would have to be a highly regulated and transparent approach, given the information that is gathered through consultation processes is used to inform parliamentary decisions. It has to be reliable. So yeah, I guess that's the first thing. And also, if we were going to be using it to enhance access through having more online type ways of gathering information from stakeholder groups, we need to remember, again, it's only supplementary. We have vast areas of Queensland in particular that have unreliable internet access, so people would miss out if this was the only way that they could engage. We need to make sure that there are other ways too. Yeah, I'll leave that there.
Thank you so much, Bernice, for your comments. I'm particularly interested on these topics when you mentioned the possibility to unlock social participation or civic participation in the legislative process, something Jonathan and I have been discussing in the past few months, including in Chile a few months ago in a conference there. The potential for generative AI on that is staggering, because for the first time we can move away from that kind of participation where the citizen votes yay, nay, absent, and start allowing for citizens to make actual comments to legislation or even making suggestions. And having the AI capability to analyze it, it makes a completely new difference for citizen engagement and their meaningful participation in the legislative process. And I focus on the word meaningful, because sometimes we open the participation channel and the institution doesn't really have the capability to read all the comments that it receives. But with AI, there is this interesting possibility Jonas, you are the head of protocol in the chamber. At the same time, you are researching about the application of AI. So you are with one foot in a very traditional role and another with a very innovative one. How can you share your perspective and how you are implementing these technologies at the chamber of São Paulo here in Brazil? Jonas,
Thank you for your question, Luís. I think the effective application of AI, like any new technology, requires a robust infrastructure and thoughtful adaptation of existing processes. Well, history has shown us that whenever groundbreaking new technology arrives, there is often a period of adjustment before its full potential can be realized. I'm thinking about, for example, electricity. After its invention, it took decades for factories to truly harness its power, not merely by replacing mechanical motors with electric ones, but by redesigning the entire factory to make the most of the energy source. So in my role as secretary of a legislative department, my focus has been on transforming our environments to fully leverage these capabilities of large language models. And in this process, AI also has been important as a bridge to get in this future. So I will give some examples of specific technologies and how they are being used right now and how they are helping to get in this future. My first example is automatic transcription and data management. That's one of the most immediate benefits, the area of automatic transcription. After sessions and meetings, AI-powered transcription tools allow us to convert spoken words into text with high confidence right now. This initiative was driven by a high demand for transcriptions that manual processes could no longer meet. With this automation, we also got a high level of accuracy and consistency in our records. And the building network that does the voice recognition also has the potential to identify previously unknown speakers from old recordings. But that's only the beginning, like I said. Transcription is a critical step in preparing our data for consumption by large language models. After transcription, we create a vector asymmetric database that enhances the searchability and usability of our records, making the speeches easily searchable. The system allows us to query the data efficiently, asking specific questions about what transpired during an event. For example, in the near future, when this system is fully available for all council members, it should be possible when in a delicate situation to search for a previous occurrence of similar events, like Bernice just told us, precedent search. The system can also summarize opinions on legislative projects. It can read questions from citizens in the live chats and propose answers. This approach not only enhances our ability to manage and analyze information, but also lays some of the groundwork for more advanced AI applications. I also like very much our facial recognition system for authorities at events. It also serves a dual purpose. First, it greatly helps protocol management because it's critical to properly identify those authorities and dignitaries. And we've implemented some AI systems that are capable of recognizing these individuals. And this system also triggers the relevant information from this authority, like the appropriate way to address him, and so minimize the human error. So this technology readily assists us in managing complex events very smoothly, ensuring that all the formalities are observed in real time. But beyond that, beyond these immediate benefits, this system also contributes to our predictive capabilities, because now we have structured information about attendance in those events. So we can forecast which authorities are likely to attend future events, allowing us to plan more effectively. There's another application that I like very much. That's the predictive building occupancy. So another critical application here is using AI to helping us in the production of reports. AI has been instrumental in creating programs that structure the data necessary for us to understand how our auditoriums and other facilities are utilized. Additionally, neural networks assist us in predicting building occupancy. That's an essential factor for resource allocation. And we can optimize the use of our spaces and results in energy savings, thereby contributing to our overall efficiency and sustainability goals. But my most favorite application for AI is the custom AI assistants that have access to our systems. We have also developed such tools, and they are very tailored to our needs. So our assistant is integrated in our system, and it has access to essential information, such as details of council members and scheduling of events. And this integration allows us to query the assistant for real-time information, which is invaluable during the legislative process, of course, but in protocol for during a reception when a delegation or a diplomat may inquire some detail about a legislation that we don't readily know, but we can ask the assistant for help, and it points us to the source of the information. So these AI assistants are becoming indispensable tools in our day-to-day operations, helping us manage these tasks with more effectively, and providing a level of support that enhances our overall productivity.
Thank you so much, Jonas, for the very insightful considerations on this topic. I know you have been working on that tirelessly in the chamber, so it's very interesting to hear some of these recent developments that even I wasn't aware of. So much appreciated. I'd like to yield the floor to Natasha for your considerations from the research department perspective. Natasha, would you like to share your thoughts on this topic as well?
Okay, yeah. So the Western Cape Provincial Parliament during COVID has automated a lot of our procedures. And it was necessary. I think it was overdue, but it has really sort of given us quite a kick so that we sort of got some momentum on it. And we are currently busy with a big registry project to get all our records properly settled and managed. But from a research perspective, we haven't done a lot to change our functions yet. But I think there's a lot of potential that we can actually do. We have two main type of research we do, which is sort of a kind of ad hoc research. That's a request comes from a chairperson, a committee, one of the senior managers here, and they want us to research a specific topic. That's more general research work, and we do desktop research. You would think that AI can help in this a lot, but it can't really, because we don't know the information ourselves. So you can't trust the AI to produce something for you because you don't know the information yourself, so you can't verify. And our biggest challenge normally is to actually gain access to information, because being from South Africa, there is a dearth of up-to-date and quality information and research generated about our country in general. And then there's also the problem that a lot of good information is behind paywalls. So the AI is not going to help us there. The other type of research we do, however, I think AI can help us a lot with. That's oversight. And we normally follow the budget cycle. So you have the budget speeches, you have the medium-term strategy documents, the longer-term strategy documents, performance plans, annual reports. All of these documents come in. The time period for Parliament to actually assess it is a very short period of time. It's a few days, a few weeks. It's very short. And the research department is supposed to provide research reports and actually analyze these documents that they get in. But our research department is too small and the time frames makes it impossible. But these documents that come in, they're formatted in a very specific way. Year after year, they have the same basic shape. They contain the same type of information. So if we can have some kind of AI tool that's specific to us that can take these documents and spit out results like we would want, we would provide it with some kind of template. This is what we want. And can you please search for information? Because it's things that the human can do, but it's tedious and it's time consuming. You need to go to this report, put it in a table, get this information from that report, that information. It's really like it's donkey work. So I would like a computer to do that. And then my work will be way easier and much more fun. Yes.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I loved how you ended your considerations. Absolutely. And with that, Jonathan, Natasha gave you the cue to share your thoughts. I mean, we have colleagues from different business areas from their own parliaments here sharing their perspectives. You are the technologists. You bring all of us together and sharing what's possible and what's not. Are we dreaming about this? So can you share a little bit about your experience on that and how can we use these tools on those specific legislative services?
Yeah, it's a really good question and segue. I like pretty much everyone's comments today as well, you know, around this particular topic. It's really quite fascinating understanding of the different challenges and what some of the potential use cases are as well from different sort of departments as well. You know, I think working with AI is really, I think, understanding what data is available, understanding what would be a good opportunity to use with that data for artificial intelligence, and even compartmentalizing that data as well in some respects to serve its fundamental purpose. So you know, I think that's a really important thing when you're looking at implementing any artificial intelligence solution is really about understanding what data is available. What data do you trust as well? Coming back down to, you know, Bernice's comments or Natasha's and Jonas, you know, like it's understanding what data you trust, because trust is the most important thing when you're actually then making decisions or evidence-based making of those sort of decisions as well. You know, I'll give you an example. You know, Hansard or transcription effectively is a source, and it's a really good source of data. However, it may not contain exactly truthful facts. And when I say that in jest. I say that because, you know, politicians will get up there on the floor and they will say what they believe to be true. Whether that is or not is something, but it goes into an official source, it goes into an efficient data set. So if you're then, say, using Hansard as your only source, then if you're using generative AI to say propose legislation for ABCDEFG, then are you actually taking into consideration all the different stakeholders or all the different citizens out there? Because you may just be, you know, or you could bias a particular AI model in a particular way just by standing up and speaking in a certain way. So you've got to be very considerate in terms of exactly what data you're actually using, consuming, and actually then how you want to then apply that as well. Because I think context, you know, I think was mentioned previously as well. Context is really important for any meaningful participation from the citizens, from AI, etc. Because AI needs to understand the context of what you're actually trying to do to obviously help you with those, what I call the high value tasks, or, and also getting rid of those low value tasks as well. The repetitive nature of some of their work is copy paste, or, copying it from one document into another document and just reformatting a few things, and, and then moving it down the actual pipeline as well. I think some of the sort of exciting things I'm seeing around the use of artificial intelligence is really about trends and understanding histories of decisions, understanding, and making people more accountable as well. So, for example, if we look at one of the classic ones in Australia is what we call hospital ramping. And every single government for the last 20 years, I know in South Australia, as an example where I'm from, has said, we're going to all improve hospital ramping and we're going to improve this service. And, everyone believes them. And it doesn't matter which government, is actually in play, have they actually improved that service? Now, if we know what the committee reports are being tabled, if we know a whole range of other data sets which the Parliament trusts, we can actually then start to use artificial intelligence to do trends, analytics, research effectively underneath those sort of underlying principles as well. And realistically, I think the best use case I'm seeing is around making evidence-based decisions, because as everyone sort of has said here, the amount of data which, say, members have to process is astronomical comparative to the timeline they get given to make a informed decision. And they're the ones making the informed decision to make legislation, to pass a law, to make an amendment, in the best interests of their constituents. So, it's really about how do we give the right tools to the right people at the right time, with the right data, to make sure that we're making sure that they can focus on what they need to do, instead of, going to a copy and paste, or doing, to Facebook, or going to an unauthorized source because they think that actually may be more accurate, or they may feel like they've got a quicker solution, which again may not be contextually bound to what they're actually trying to research for. So there's some really interesting, I think, dynamics when you're looking at artificial intelligence and how you actually then use that in a parliamentary sense. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And you remembered me a very old case since before Bússola, and when I was at Google, and colleagues suggested some 10 years ago or even more, oh, we should create a chatbot for the Congress.
Yeah.
And guys, this is a terrible idea. I'm not even discussing the accuracy. I mean, imagine that in a imaginary world where our accuracy on our side is 100%, which is not. But which is the source of the data? Oh, the speeches. As Jonathan just said, I mean, is the nature of the parliamentary work that sometimes speech they don't have any correlation with other elements of the legislative process. So each citizen asks, okay, is the particular member pro or against a particular bill? How can you find that? So
and is it actually an accurate representation based on the context of that data as well? Like, are they pro for this or against this? It's all about the context of why they're actually thinking that way as well, which may not be in any data set. It may just be in the person's mind. So I think it's a very interesting point that you're making there.
Exactly. And I think in addition to the technology side, for us to modernize the parliament, we need to know the nature of the institution we're trying to modernize, the elements that sometimes we are unable to. So
and also respecting the history as well of the parliamentary process, and the history of a lot of his jurisdictions that we are talking with, they're going back 150 plus years.
Exactly. Jonas, with that, I have the cue to ask you the next question. As I mentioned, I see you as the bridge between the traditional and the innovation here at the Chamber of São Paulo. So which strategies and approaches can be employed to bridge this gap between these traditional processes and procedures within your department, of course, and making the institution more innovative to AI applications, and how to transition through this process?
This is not an easy task by no means. I think that's harnessing the potential for AI. We should leverage large language models as universal translators. That's my favorite application for them. They are capable of transforming natural language queries into computer readable requests. So this allows us to assess our internal systems more efficiently and develop those AI tools that address those specific challenges, such as the network of voice biometrics I just mentioned. But the journey to achieving this ideal vision, I think in many ways, it can be smooth and gradual. However, there are some quantum leaps where we must leave behind some old paradigms and embrace new ones. And even the smoothest of the transitions may not convince those who are completely resistant to innovation. And there are some, but my overall approach addressing this challenge is divided into three main stages. First, I give some proof of value of the technology to our workers. So first, I introduce the AI through user-friendly interfaces like chatbots or ChatGPT and demonstrate how it can save a significant amount of work, such as drafting the first version of a document or email. And at the same time, we provide some basic technological literacy to our staff, ensuring that they remain in the control of this process. So this initial introduction generates minimal resistance because it's very easy to understand how it can be used, and it offers clear benefits in terms of time and effort savings. But then we get to the second step where I think we must require from software vendors that they develop some consumable and standardized APIs for their programs, so we can take the control of the information exchange protocols. And in this control, we ensure that the integrations are consistent and secure. Additionally, when we configure response formats to include all necessary information, this approach requires a broad understanding of the work itself, and we engage the team in helping abstracting the relevant information exchange between different stages of the process. And it also has the obvious benefits of increasing transparency, because when we see the data, we can readily identify how to make some of this data accessible to the public, while properly handling sensitive information, of course. And when we have trained staff and adapted software, we can start to integrate the intelligent assistant. And when we connect these assistants to LLM via API, and we show to staff how there was a task that previously was performed manually, such as navigating through various screens, and it took a lot of time. Now it can be done with a simple query. And so we ensure that these assistants do not make autonomous decisions, of course, but they help us to gather information and prepare our documents efficiently. And at this stage also, the value of the technology is evidence for those using it. We don't need to force its adoption. Instead, it occurs naturally because the employees recognize the gains in productivity and efficiency. So in summary, my strategy has been to showcase the value of AI and to make the staff part of the process of laying the foundation for more broader applications of AI. So when everyone are engaged in this process, they are very happy to delegate the donkey work, like was said, the repetitive task, and focus on challenges that require more attention and creativity. And I think that's the way for a truly digital work environments.
Thank you so much, Jonas, for your considerations. I'd like to invite Bernice to share your thoughts on this topic as well. Bernice, would you like to share your considerations?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about this question, one of the main things that came into my mind was showing people the benefits, and I think that's the proof of value that Jonas was just speaking about. But for example, the manual processes we use now when we process and analyse written submissions to committee inquiries, when we identify information that might need to be redacted from a submission because it's unparliamentary language or because there's an accusation or something that shouldn't, that isn't just automatically going to be published. They're all prone to human error. Our assessments about what a submission means is based on the analyst's internal biases. We all come from a particular cultural perspective, and we all come from different backgrounds in other ways, different levels of or different life experiences, I guess. So those are things that are pretty difficult to control for in a human. So I'd be interested to see how AI could potentially, I guess, do if it was a bit more clear and explicit what the biases were. It might actually just might make things a little more transparent potentially than when people are doing that work. I just see some potential there because assumptions are spelled out or should be. The key to me too is being very clear in an organisation that AI is just another tool. It's not a substitute for human assessments and considerations either, but it can help people become perhaps aware of some of their unconscious biases. I guess one thing to note, and I think Jonathan mentioned something like this earlier, that AI can produce something that's correct based on facts, but it might be completely unsuitable for the purpose. So a human has to get involved. If a committee was to draft a report that was purely factual, there is not one single committee report that I've ever seen that wouldn't have nuance over it and all throughout it in order for the committee to agree to accept it as their report and adopt it. And so there's so much human judgment about political environments, about personal views, etc., that can't be replaced by a machine. But getting a first draft of something and having the facts there, the stuff that can be agreed is basic factual, is a good start. Another thing I was thinking about is the integrity of public hearings that committees hold, if they were to be done using or facilitated perhaps using some sort of AI. And I'm not just talking about video conference, although that's one element. I'm talking about things like using e-whiteboards, having systems where people can actually, as though they were in a workshop, being able to sort through ideas, that sort of thing, and challenge their own thinking, testing it against other people and other participants. Again, if that sort of thing was to be used for parliamentary decision making, you'd want to be very confident that the people who were involved in that process were real and that they were who they said they were. And I imagine, I don't know, but I would hope that there was scope for AI to help in that verification process as well. And ultimately, if we were to show how AI could be used to increase the trustworthiness of information, rather than being seen as a threat to trustworthiness of information, then I think acceptance levels might be higher. And again, that's probably by showing people and comparing to the current state.
Thank you so much, Bernice. So many points you made. I won't be able to comment on them all, but on your last considerations, is for decades or centuries, in some cases, people trust in the reliability of the information produced by parliamentary experts. And if we choose to utilize an AI strategy, as you mentioned, not to replace human expertise, but augment it, we need to guarantee this reliability is maintained. People know, oh, this information, even though it can be generated by an AI system, it's been reviewed by parliamentary experts, and who is accountable for any mistakes that might have been published, for example. And this is of the absolute importance. Last week, Jonathan and I, we were in a panel with the clerk of the House of Commons in Canada and the House parliamentarian from the US House. And that was the transversal points in the entire conversation. How can we keep the trust and the advisement on the procedural advisement that these offices are providing, even though even using AI tools, for example, people need to rely that we are providing them the right advice. So absolutely, I completely agree with all your points. I don't have time to comment on them all. So insightful, but I'll just make these very quick notes on that. With that, Natasha, would you like to share your comments as well on this question on how to transition the research department to a more innovative AI open area of work?
Yes. I don't know, it was in the media, but obviously not, it wouldn't have been reported widely, especially not outside of South Africa. But our parliament suffered a cyber attack last year. And since then, and before that, actually, we have been very security conscious. And also, as soon as you have an incident like that, then the information regulator do an audit. So we have very sort of strong strictures about how we as parliamentarians, people who work here, can interact with the internet, with other like service providers. So for me, a big challenge here is actually to understand what the limitations of AI is and what I can actually achieve, because I won't be able to really play around with it myself because of these privacy and internet security concerns. So we've been pretty much limited or told this is what you're allowed to use. And the AI which we can use, or the program that has been enabled, is not incredibly useful. So I would have to make a business case for what I want. And then hopefully the IT people will take kindly to me. So this is a kind of challenge. And I think the other units in our institution will have the same problem. You will need to like do research and see what can you actually achieve. Because again, the IT people who know about AI may not necessarily know all your business processes and your functionality in your unit. So they may not be able to advise you properly. So there's a lot of interaction and teamwork that will be required between different departments of our institution to actually do this transition properly. And people will drive it. Somebody will need to like act as a champion to drive this process forward and to sort of like just to push for it, to justify it, because obviously there's competing interests for resource use in any institution. So this is kind of stuff that we as the research unit will have to navigate. I'm looking forward to it a bit because I've already talked to the IT people, and they were like quite keen to try and get a business case going, but we'll see how it goes forward. And perhaps in a year, if I'm on a panel like this, I can tell you how wonderful we are doing with our new analysis AI programs. So yeah, we'll see.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I'm sorry to hear about the cyber attack. I wasn't aware of this, but absolutely, that as we have been discussing for some time, we need to have the guardrails on both how to use artificial intelligence tools, but also including that AI strategy in a larger modernization and digital transformation strategy that encompasses cybersecurity. We have Jonathan as the big expert here. I'm not on cybersecurity, but absolutely, I agree with your points. Jonathan, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think the common sort of theme that I've heard from the previous sort of three panelists was all around speaking to people. So whenever we're sort of talking about that, it's all about change management. So putting my sort of change management hat on, one of the best sort of strategies or sort of frameworks that we've sort of used in the past is really about, and we've used, say, for example, the ProSci ADCAR model. So ADCAR is a really good strategy for driving change and understanding what change is. So ADCAR is really an acronym. So for people who aren't aware of this one in particular, so driving awareness, so engaging with people, engaging with the employees. Why are we changing? You know, being transparent about that change, you know, is really important as a foundational piece, you know, and also give the opportunity for staff and for citizens potentially to ask questions, make suggestions as well. Like that's a really important foundational piece. So from your awareness side of things, you can then create your desire. So the desire to change. So what are the, you know, reactions to that change going to be? Is this going to affect my job? Is this going to, you know, actually enhance my job, as an example? You know, what are the staff actually going to feel about the incorporation of artificial intelligence into their day-to-day job, as an example? Identify the champions of the technology as well. So who would like to use it the most? Who do you feel like will get the most benefit and can then help drive that change internally within the team as well? And yeah, address people's concerns. Like, don't just dismiss people's concerns as well. You got to help build up that desire for that change. Knowledge is the key. So, you know, provide training, coaching, show them how this could actually benefit their day-to-day lives. And again, it's a tool. So coming back down to Bernice's comment as well, it's a tool to supplement the business. It's not a tool to replace the business. So it's about how do you actually then provide that training, you know, the coaching to show the benefits of what that tool could actually provide. There might be a skill gap. Because, you know, everyone uses, for example, Google differently on how you search for things. The way I search for things will be very different to everyone else. And again, depends on particularly what department. I know in the procedural department, when you've got precedents or you've got legal opinions or, you know, standing orders, sessional orders, etc., the way you probably want to search for those might be very different for how you then want to search, say, your transcripts as an example. So, you know, understanding those use cases, the knowledge behind that as well. You know, then you want to then move on to the engagement zone. So once you've moved on from the knowledge part, you can move on to the ability. So, you know, monitoring the performance, setting a reasonable goals, like what is your definition of success around this? So, you know, providing the capability, you know, to provide that ability side of it is really quite important. And then making adjustments to your processes potentially to drive that change. And then you got the reinforcement, which is your last stage. So that's really about your continuous improvement, monitoring, you know, and making sure that you're giving good feedback as well, and receiving that feedback to have a continuous improvement cycle built into the actual process. So that's sort of my general strategy in terms of change management.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for your considerations. I'd like to thank all of you for your participation today. We are reaching our time limit. But before we go, I'd like to yield the floor very quickly for each one of you. And I apologize for the rudeness for asking you to be quick. For any final thoughts, and if you want to include very briefly on your final thoughts, your hopes for the future on how this technology can impact the Parliament. Very briefly, in 1 minute, each one of you. Natasha, I would like to start with your final considerations.
Okay, I would like to have a lot of stuff automated that's currently very repetitive and tedious. I think it will help me do my job better, and it will free up time so that I can actually do more work. I just are sort of wary of people adopting technology or adopting technology just for the sake of adopting technology. And then there's like duplication of applications. This one does X and the new one you get also does X. And if it's an improvement, yes, adopt it. But if it's not an improvement, why are you spending the money? So I would like careful consideration before anything is adopted, so that you actually know what you're getting into. But yeah, I'm keen to like sort of, yeah, have better tools to do my job better.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for your final comments and for your participation today. Jonas, would you like to share your final thoughts also with these additional points of your hopes for the future?
Thank you, Luís. Yes, actually, we don't know where the developments of the large language models will end, so that's a very open-ended question. But not assuming some fundamental breakthrough on the technology, I think that besides the increase in efficiency, which is expected, AI will change how we work, will change the nature of our works, and my hope is that this new work is more significant to those performing it. It's more meaningful, and I think that by embracing these technologies, we can unlock also new capabilities and not assuming new breakthroughs. Just with the current level of the technology, we can do more and we can do better. So there are lots of challenges, but I think the opportunities far surpass them. So I'm very excited.
Thank you so much, Jonas, for that. Bernice, would you like to share your final thoughts also with your hopes for the future?
Sure. I think that for the simpler sorts of tasks, the highly administrative sorts of tasks, efficiency gains would be pretty well immediate once people understood the potential of AI for making some of the donkey work. I love that expression. Something that doesn't have to take up so much time, so you can focus on the higher value work that really requires human intervention. And I think that there's great potential for using it in the committee stage of a bill because of the ability to contextualize information, to verify potentially information, and explain it to different stakeholder groups as well, perhaps in a way that is meaningful to those groups.
Thank you so much, Bernice, for your final comments and for your participation today as well. Jonathan, you have the hardest task possible, which is to close this panel. So as a technologist, I don't want to know your hopes. I want to know which of these hopes that we discussed today are possible and which are not, with your final considerations, of course.
Yeah, listen, I think anything's possible. That's the way I always sort of look at it. With the right information and the right tool sets available to you. One of the things I'd like to just quickly close out on, though, is don't expect an off-the-shelf AI model to work out of a box by just dumping all your data in it. You've got to make sure that you're understanding the context, the data, and the use cases for that. And sometimes it might mean that, different models for different use cases, but, and we've done it for other parliaments in Australia and sort of other things where we've actually tested, that sort of traditional, let's just get an AI model, put all the data in and see what happens. And you'll notice pretty quickly, because of the structures of Parliament, that it doesn't fit straight out of the box. So there has to be fine tuning. There's got to be capability built into those systems to really make it useful for the end users. But listen, I'm very excited about the next chapters and how we can actually really, I think, help both the parliamentary side and the citizen side as well. So, I think there's going to be some really good advancements occurring over the next sort of 12 to 24 months.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for your considerations and your final thoughts. Thank you for Bernice, for Jonas, also, and from Natasha for your participation. It was a pleasure to moderate you today.